Ma'am, if you keep reaching into your bag, this is going to get worse. Officer Ryan Mercer barked as rainwater shimmered beneath the flashing red and blue lights of the patrol car, turning the grocery store parking lot into a blur of reflections and nervous faces. Vanessa Cole stood frozen beside her silver sedan, one hand lifted slowly in the cold night air while the other clutched the strap of a reusable grocery bag hanging from her wrist. Around her feet, oranges rolled across the wet asphalt, bumping softly against oil-stained curbs as shoppers stopped beside their carts to stare. Someone nearby whispered, "What did she do?" But nobody answered. Mercer stepped closer, broad shoulders tense beneath his soaked uniform jacket, his flashlight beam cutting across Vanessa's face. "I said step away from the vehicle." His voice carried through the parking lot hard enough to silence even the distant hum of traffic from the interstate beyond the shopping center. Vanessa inhaled carefully. Her hoodie clung damply to her arms from the steady November rain, and a strand of dark curls stuck against her cheek. "Officer," she said calmly, "the car is registered to me." Mercer let out a short laugh without humor. "Funny. Dispatch says otherwise." Behind him, Officer Tyler Boone shifted uneasily beside the cruiser, glancing down at the tablet in his hands before looking back toward Vanessa again. The grocery store automatic doors slid open with a mechanical sigh, spilling warm yellow light onto the pavement as another cluster of customers slowed to watch. Phones were already coming out. Vanessa noticed the cameras immediately. She always noticed details. The trembling teenager recording beside the newspaper stand. The elderly white woman clutching her purse tighter as she stared. The little girl peeking from behind a shopping cart with wide, uncertain eyes. Vanessa lowered her hands slightly. "You ran the plate wrong," she said. Her voice never rose. That somehow irritated Mercer more. "You telling me how to do my job now?" Rain tapped steadily against the hood of the cruiser. Somewhere above them thunder rolled low across the dark sky. Vanessa's groceries tipped sideways as another carton slipped free, landing near Mercer's boots. A thin box labeled insulin starter kit slid across the pavement before stopping against the tire of the patrol car. Vanessa instinctively stepped toward it. Mercer reacted instantly. "Don't move." His hand caught her wrist hard enough to stop her momentum. Gasps rippled through the small crowd gathering beneath the grocery store awning. Vanessa winced slightly but kept her posture straight. "That medication is temperature sensitive," she said quietly. "Please don't crush it." Mercer ignored her. "Put your hands behind your back." Tyler Boone hesitated. "Ryan," he muttered under his breath. "Maybe we should verify the I said cuffs." The metallic click echoed sharper than the rain itself. Vanessa closed her eyes for half a second as cold steel locked around her wrists. The parking lot seemed to grow still around her. Even the people filming stopped whispering. Mercer guided her toward the hood of the cruiser, while water streamed down the windshield in crooked silver lines. "You people always make this harder than it needs to be," he muttered. Vanessa looked up slowly, rainwater sliding along her face beneath the flashing lights. "Officer," she said, her voice quieter now, steadier somehow. "You are making a mistake you cannot undo." Mercer smirked as he tightened his grip on her arm. "Lady, tonight you're just another suspect." But standing 20 feet away beneath the flickering grocery store sign, an elderly woman suddenly stared at Vanessa with growing recognition, her expression draining pale as she whispered to herself, "Oh my God, they have no idea who she is." The inside of the patrol car smelled faintly of rainwater, coffee, and old vinyl seats baked through too many southern summers. Vanessa Cole sat motionless in the back seat while streaks of water crawled slowly down the fogged window beside her, bending the grocery store lights into blurry ribbons of gold and blue. Her wrists rested carefully in her lap despite the cold metal around them. Across the parking lot, the crowd had begun to thin, but a few people still lingered beneath the awning, staring toward the cruiser with the uneasy curiosity Americans carried whenever flashing lights interrupted an ordinary evening. Officer Tyler Boone remained outside near the trunk, speaking quietly into his shoulder radio, while glancing toward Vanessa every few seconds. His face looked younger up close, barely past 30, with the kind of uncertainty that had not fully hardened into arrogance yet. Ryan Mercer, meanwhile, stood near the driver's side door speaking to dispatch with growing irritation in his voice. "I already told you the vehicle came back flagged," he snapped. "Run it again if you have to." Vanessa listened without reacting. Her breathing stayed slow and measured, but her eyes drifted downward toward the crushed grocery bag resting on the floorboard near her shoes. One orange had rolled loose beside the partition. The insulin package was gone. That bothered her more than the handcuffs. She closed her eyes briefly. Somewhere across town, her mother would be sitting in the recliner beside the apartment window, probably worried already. Gloria Cole hated storms. Ever since her stroke 3 years earlier, thunder made her anxious. Vanessa had promised she would not stay out late tonight. Just groceries. Just medicine. Just flowers for the kitchen table because her mother liked fresh flowers even on difficult days. The memory tightened quietly inside her chest. Outside, Mercer yanked open the driver's side door hard enough to rattle the frame. Rain blew briefly into the vehicle before he slammed it shut behind him. "You know what your problem is?" he said, turning halfway toward the back seat. Vanessa looked at him calmly. "No, officer." "What is my problem?" Mercer rested one arm across the steering wheel. "People like you walk around acting like every cop is the enemy." The dashboard lights cast sharp shadows across his jaw. "Maybe if you cooperated from the beginning, none of this would have happened." Vanessa watched him for a long moment before speaking. "I asked you to verify the registration?" Mercer scoffed. "You argued. I corrected you." Silence settled heavily between them. Rain hammered the roof in uneven bursts while red and blue light pulsed across Vanessa's face like slow lightning. Tyler Boone opened the passenger door suddenly, his voice careful. Dispatch reran the plate. Mercer did not turn around immediately. "And?" Tyler hesitated. "The vehicle is registered to Vanessa Cole." Mercer exhaled sharply through his nose. "I know that already." Tyler swallowed. "There is more." He lowered his voice. "The system flagged her because the database was updated under federal security clearance records." Vanessa said nothing. Mercer's jaw tightened. "So?" Tyler looked toward the back seat. "Ryan, she works for the federal court system." The cruiser grew strangely quiet after that. Even the radio static seemed distant for a moment. Mercer stared ahead through the rain-smeared windshield, fingers tightening slowly around the steering wheel. Vanessa could see the reflection of the grocery store sign trembling faintly across the glass in front of him. Fresh Market. Open 24 hours. Normal words from a normal night that no longer felt normal at all. Tyler shifted awkwardly beside the open passenger door. "Maybe we should uncuff her," he murmured. Mercer finally turned, eyes narrowing toward Vanessa again, studying her face now with something colder than confidence. Not fear yet, but the first crack beneath it. Vanessa met his stare without anger, without triumph, just exhaustion. Then quietly, almost gently, she spoke. "Officer Mercer, I gave you every opportunity to stop this before it became irreversible." For 3 long seconds, nobody inside the patrol car moved. Rain continued sliding down the windshield in crooked streams while the grocery store sign flickered weakly against the storm clouds overhead. Officer Ryan Mercer finally leaned back in his seat and rubbed one hand across his mouth, as if trying to erase what he had just heard. "Federal court system does not mean judge," he muttered sharply. Tyler Boone remained standing beside the open passenger door, soaked rainwater dripping from the edge of his short brown hair onto the pavement below. "I know," he said carefully, "but dispatch included a judicial security advisory." Mercer's eyes snapped toward him. "A what?" Tyler swallowed. "Sensitive personnel flag." The silence afterward felt heavier than before. Vanessa Cole sat perfectly still in the back seat, her cuffed hands resting against the dark fabric of her jeans while blue police lights pulsed softly across her face. She did not look angry. Somehow that unsettled Mercer more. Most people yelled by now. Most people threatened lawsuits or screamed into their phones demanding names and badge numbers. Vanessa had done none of that. She had simply watched. Calm. Patient. Like someone waiting for a clock to finish counting down. Mercer suddenly opened his door and stepped back into the rain. Cold wind rushed briefly through the cruiser before the door slammed shut again. Tyler glanced once toward Vanessa before following after him. Outside, their voices became muffled beneath the storm, broken apart by the crackle of police radios and passing traffic beyond the parking lot. Vanessa turned her gaze toward the window. Across the lot, employees were gathering abandoned shopping carts beneath the awning while puddles reflected distorted red and blue light across the asphalt. One worker quietly picked up her scattered groceries from the ground, placing bruised oranges and crushed bread back into soaked paper bags. The sight tugged unexpectedly at her chest. Her mother always hated waste. Even broken fruit deserves dignity, Gloria Cole used to say while slicing damaged peaches in their tiny apartment kitchen years ago. Vanessa could almost smell cinnamon and warm cobbler crust for half a second before the memory faded beneath the cold fluorescent glow inside the cruiser. Outside, Mercer paced near the rear bumper with one hand pressed against his shoulder microphone. Tyler stood beside him looking increasingly uncomfortable. Vanessa could read body language well. Years inside federal courtrooms taught her that people often revealed themselves long before they spoke. Mercer's shoulders were no longer rigid with authority. Now they carried agitation, calculation, fear trying not to become visible. Then Tyler said something Vanessa could not hear. Mercer froze. Even from inside the vehicle, she saw the color drain slightly from his face beneath the parking lot lights. Slowly, he turned his head. Toward the back seat. Toward her. Tyler stepped closer to him again. "Ryan," he said quietly enough that only fragments reached through the rain. "There are already videos online." Mercer cursed under his breath. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. Of course there were. America recorded everything now. Every humiliation. Every misunderstanding. Every moment people forgot another human being was standing in front of them. The rear door suddenly opened beside her. Cold rain swept inside again as Mercer leaned down slightly, trying to regain the confident tone he had earlier. "Ma'am," he began, "there seems to have been some confusion regarding identification procedures tonight." Vanessa slowly looked up at him. Water dripped from the brim of his cap onto the rubber floor mat below. "Confusion," she repeated softly. Mercer nodded quickly. "Yes. The registration flag created concern over possible vehicle fraud." Vanessa studied him in silence for a moment, so long that even Tyler shifted awkwardly nearby. Then she asked one quiet question. "Officer Mercer, before tonight, how many times have you mistaken a white federal employee for a criminal in a grocery store parking lot?" Mercer opened his mouth but no words came out. Only rain answered for him. Ryan Mercer stood in the rain with his jaw clenched so tightly the muscle near his temple twitched beneath the flashing patrol lights. The grocery store parking lot had nearly emptied now, but not completely. A few customers still lingered under the awning pretending to check receipts or rearrange shopping bags while secretly watching every second unfold. Their phones remained raised. Tyler Boone shifted beside the open cruiser door, shoulders tense beneath his damp uniform. "Ryan," he said quietly, "we should uncuff her and document the release before this gets worse." Mercer ignored him. His eyes stayed fixed on Vanessa Cole sitting calmly inside the back seat, rainwater reflecting silver across the glass between them. She looked composed in a way that made him increasingly uncomfortable. Not scared. Not emotional. Just observant. Like she was memorizing every detail. The flicker of the damaged grocery store sign. The time. Stamp glowing on the dashboard clock. The exact wording he used. Mercer had dealt with angry people before. Furious people. Drunk people. But calm people frightened him most because calm people usually knew exactly where the real power lived. He leaned slightly into the back seat again. "Ma'am," he said carefully, forcing steadiness into his voice, "we are prepared to resolve this misunderstanding right now." Vanessa tilted her head slightly. Resolve. Yes. Mercer nodded once. We can remove the restraints, return your property, and get you on your way. Vanessa looked past him toward the rain-soaked parking lot where one crushed orange still rested near the curb beneath the blue lights. On my way, she repeated softly. Tyler stepped closer, lowering his voice. Judge Cole, I am sorry for the inconvenience tonight. Mercer shot him a sharp glance at the word judge, but the damage was already done. The title hung in the cold air between them heavier than thunder. One of the remaining bystanders gasped quietly beneath the awning. Another immediately lowered their phone, suddenly realizing what they had been recording this entire time. Vanessa finally lifted her eyes back toward Mercer. Officer, she said calmly, do you know why I became a federal judge? Mercer said nothing. Rain hammered against the roof of the cruiser in uneven bursts, while distant thunder rolled low above the city skyline. Vanessa continued quietly. When I was 9 years old, my father was stopped outside a pharmacy while buying asthma medication from my little brother. Tyler listened without moving. Mercer's posture stiffened. 3 officers made him kneel on wet pavement for 20 minutes because someone said a black man in a blue jacket looked suspicious. Her voice never changed. That somehow made the story hit harder. My father worked 2 jobs. He coached Little League on weekends. He had never been arrested in his life. Mercer shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa looked down briefly at the cuffs around her wrists before speaking again. Do you know what I remember most from that night? Neither officer answered. Not the embarrassment. Not the fear. She slowly raised her cuffed hands slightly. I remember watching him apologize to the officers afterward. Tyler frowned. Apologize? Vanessa nodded faintly. He thanked them for eventually believing him. The rain softened slightly outside, turning from pounding sheets into a quieter, steady drizzle. Mercer looked away first. Toward the parking lot. Toward the cameras. Toward anywhere except her face. Vanessa watched him carefully for another second before speaking one final time. Tonight was never about my title, Officer Mercer. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper beneath the hum of the idling cruiser engine. The problem is that you only started seeing my humanity after you heard my position. Tyler slowly reached toward the handcuffs at her wrists. Mercer did not stop him this time. The metallic click sounded painfully small beneath the storm. The handcuffs came off with a dull metallic click, leaving faint red marks around Vanessa Cole's wrists beneath the cold parking lot lights. For a moment she simply rubbed one thumb slowly against the other wrist, restoring feeling while rainwater dripped from the edge of the patrol car roof beside her. Nobody spoke. Officer Tyler Boone stepped back awkwardly, giving her space, while Ryan Mercer stood rigid near the open cruiser door with both hands resting on his duty belt like he no longer knew what to do with them. The storm had weakened into a fine mist now, but the air still smelled of wet pavement, gasoline, and tension. Vanessa carefully stepped out of the patrol car. Her sneakers touched the rain-dark asphalt beside the scattered remains of her groceries. One paper bag had split completely open. Bread soaked through. A bouquet of white carnations lay crushed near the curb, petals stuck against the pavement like torn pieces of paper. Vanessa stared at the flowers for half a second before kneeling slowly to pick them up. The movement felt strangely intimate in the sudden silence around them. Tyler immediately moved forward. Judge Cole, please let me help you with that. Vanessa looked up briefly. Thank you? Her voice remained calm, but exhaustion had started settling beneath it now like weight pressing quietly through concrete. Tyler crouched beside her, gathering bruised oranges into a fresh grocery bag from the trunk of the cruiser. Nearby, a few bystanders still lingered under the awning, though the mood had changed completely. Earlier there had been curiosity. Now there was discomfort. Guilt. Nobody seemed eager to keep filming anymore. Ryan Mercer remained standing alone beside the driver's side door, staring out across the nearly empty parking lot where flashing police lights reflected endlessly in the puddles. His confidence had disappeared so quickly it almost felt unreal. Vanessa rose slowly with the salvaged flowers in her hands. Water dripped from the stems onto her sleeves. Officer Boone, she said softly, The insulin? Tyler's expression immediately tightened. He looked toward Mercer. Mercer glanced down at the crushed package lying near the front tire of the cruiser. For the first time that night, shame crossed his face openly. He bent down, picked it up carefully, and turned it over in his hands. The cardboard was soaked through. I did not realize, he said quietly. Vanessa accepted the damaged box from him without speaking. She looked at it for a long moment before exhaling softly through her nose. My mother needs this every night at 10. Mercer swallowed hard. Somewhere behind them, thunder rumbled faintly across the dark horizon. Tyler checked his watch instinctively. 10:17. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. The realization settled over all three of them at the same time. Mercer immediately reached for his radio. Dispatch, he said quickly, voice tighter now. Locate the nearest 24-hour pharmacy still open within 5 miles. Tyler stared at him in surprise. Mercer ignored it. And call ahead for an emergency refill authorization. Vanessa watched him quietly. The flashing lights painted alternating bands of blue and red across his rain-soaked uniform while the radio crackled in his hand. He suddenly looked less like an officer in control of a scene and more like a man trying desperately to hold together something already broken. Tyler finished packing the remaining groceries into the trunk of Vanessa's sedan, while the elderly woman from earlier slowly approached from beneath the awning holding a folded umbrella. Judge Cole? She asked gently. Vanessa turned. I am Eleanor Price. The older woman's eyes glistened beneath the parking lot lights. I recognize you from television. You helped my grandson during his sentencing hearing last year. Vanessa's expression softened slightly despite the exhaustion in her face. Mrs. Price shook her head slowly as she looked toward the officers. You treated that boy like a human being when nobody else would. Her voice trembled faintly. I am sorry nobody did the same for you tonight. Vanessa stood still beneath the fading rain, clutching crushed carnations in one hand and ruined insulin in the other while the parking lot fell completely silent around her. By the time Vanessa Cole finally pulled into the narrow parking lot outside her apartment building, the rain had almost stopped completely. Only a soft drizzle remained, whispering against the windshield as the engine ticked quietly beneath the hood of her aging silver sedan. The city looked different after midnight. Empty sidewalks. Dim laundromat signs glowing blue through fogged windows. Traffic lights changing for nobody. Vanessa sat motionless behind the steering wheel for several seconds with both hands resting lightly at the top of the wheel. The red marks around her wrists had darkened slightly beneath the streetlight outside. In the passenger seat beside her sat the replacement insulin officer Tyler Boone had managed to retrieve from the 24-hour pharmacy 20 minutes earlier. Ryan Mercer had paid for it himself without saying a word. Vanessa had noticed that too. She noticed everything. Upstairs, the apartment windows still glowed warm yellow through the rain. Her mother was awake. Vanessa already knew that before she stepped out of the car. Gloria Cole always left the kitchen light on when she worried. Vanessa gathered the grocery bags slowly, careful not to crush the salvaged flowers further, then climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and somebody's late-night fried chicken drifting beneath an apartment door nearby. Familiar smells. Familiar walls. Normal life waiting quietly after an abnormal night. When she opened the apartment door, warm air wrapped around her immediately. Vanessa? Gloria's voice carried weakly from the living room. Vanessa forced calm into her expression before stepping farther inside. I am here, Mama. Gloria Cole sat beneath a knitted blanket in her recliner near the television, reading glasses low on her nose and concern written across every line in her face. Baby, what happened? You are soaked. Vanessa set the groceries carefully onto the kitchen counter before answering. Long night. Gloria's eyes drifted immediately toward Vanessa's wrists. Mothers always saw what other people missed. Her expression tightened softly. What did they do? Vanessa looked down for half a second. The apartment suddenly felt very quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and rain tapping gently against the fire escape outside. She removed her damp hoodie slowly and hung it over a chair. They thought my car was stolen. Gloria stared at her in disbelief. Your car? Vanessa nodded once. At the grocery store. Her mother leaned back slowly into the recliner cushion, sadness settling across her face deeper than anger ever could. Lord have mercy. Vanessa unpacked the groceries quietly while Gloria watched her from across the room. Milk into the refrigerator. Bread onto the counter. Bruised oranges into a glass bowl beside the sink. The motions felt automatic now, but her hands trembled slightly when she reached the crushed carnations. Several white petals fell onto the countertop like drops of paper snow. Gloria noticed immediately. Those were for me? Vanessa smiled faintly despite herself. They were prettier an hour ago. Gloria's expression softened. Still are. For the first time all night, Vanessa nearly lost composure. Not from humiliation. Not from fear. From kindness. She turned away quickly toward the sink, gripping the counter edge while city lights shimmered faintly through rainwater outside the kitchen window. Behind her, Gloria spoke quietly. Did they apologize? Vanessa stood still for a long moment before answering. They apologized after they learned who I was. Silence followed that sentence like a shadow. Gloria lowered her eyes slowly. She understood immediately. Vanessa finally turned back around, exhaustion visible now beneath the calm mask she had worn all evening. That is the part one cannot stop thinking about, she admitted softly. Not one person asked if I was hurt. They only asked what position I held. Gloria looked at her daughter with heartbreak and pride tangled together inside the same expression. Then gently, almost like prayer, she said, Baby, some people only recognize dignity when power is attached to it. Vanessa glanced toward the dark apartment window where her reflection stared back faintly against the rain-streaked glass. The bruises around her wrists looked darker now beneath the kitchen light. And for the first time that night, she realized she was no longer thinking like a woman who had been humiliated. She was thinking like a judge. By 8 o'clock the next morning, the entire police department felt different. Conversation stopped when doors opened. Officers who normally joked beside the coffee machine now stood silently staring at their phones while local news anchors spoke in urgent voices from mounted televisions across the precinct. Rain clouds still hung low over the city outside, turning the morning light gray and heavy through the station windows. Officer Ryan Mercer stood near the break room counter gripping a paper coffee cup that had long gone cold in his hand. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image again. Vanessa Cole standing beneath flashing lights holding crushed white carnations while asking him one quiet question he still could not answer. How many times had he mistaken a white federal employee for a criminal? The television volume suddenly rose as another officer grabbed the remote. Breaking this morning, the anchor announced, her voice sharp with urgency. Federal Judge Vanessa Cole has officially filed a $3 million civil rights lawsuit against the city police department following what attorneys are calling a racially motivated unlawful detention captured on video. The room froze. Mercer felt the blood drain from his face. On the television screen, shaky cell phone footage filled the frame. Rain. Flashing lights. Vanessa standing beside the patrol car with handcuffs around her wrists, while groceries lay scattered across wet asphalt. Someone nearby cursed softly under their breath. Another officer muttered, Jesus Christ. Then the footage zoomed closer. Mercer heard his own voice echo across the break room speakers. Tonight you are just another suspect. Silence swallowed the room after that sentence. Nobody looked at him directly anymore, but he could feel it. The shift. The judgment. The quiet calculations happening behind every lowered gaze. Sergeant Linda Morales entered the break room carrying a thick folder tucked beneath one arm. She looked furious. Mercer. My office. Now. The command cracked through the silence like glass. Ryan followed her down the hallway while fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Every step felt heavier than the last. Inside the office, Morales shut the door hard behind him and dropped the folder onto the desk. Printed screenshots spilled across the surface. Headlines. Social media posts. Freeze frames from body camera footage already circulating online. One image showed Vanessa sitting silently in the back of the patrol car while rainwater streaked the window beside her face. Another showed crushed insulin lying near the tire of the cruiser. Morales rubbed both hands across her temples. Do you understand what this has become overnight? Mercer stared down at the photographs without speaking. Morales continued. Civil rights groups are involved now. Federal oversight is involved. The mayor's office called twice before sunrise. Her voice lowered sharply. And the judge assigned to review preliminary filings? She pointed toward one of the papers. Close personal colleague of Vanessa Cole. Mercer finally sat down slowly in the chair across from her desk. For the first time in years, he looked uncertain. Smaller somehow. I did not know who she was, he muttered quietly. Morales stared at him for a long moment before answering. That is exactly the problem. Outside her office window, reporters had already begun gathering across the street from the station entrance. Satellite vans lined the curb. Cameras pointed toward the building like weapons waiting to fire. Mercer watched them silently. Then his phone buzzed. One new message. Tyler Boone. Ryan, there is more footage. Mercer opened the attachment with trembling fingers. Another angle from the parking lot. Clearer this time. The little girl's voice could be heard near the end of the recording asking her mother a question so quietly it almost disappeared beneath the rain. Why are the police hurting that lady? The video stopped there. Mercer lowered the phone slowly. For the first time since becoming an officer 12 years earlier, he no longer felt protected by the badge clipped to his chest. He felt exposed by it. The courthouse steps were already crowded before sunrise. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder behind metal barricades while camera crews adjusted lenses beneath the cold gray morning sky. Microphones bearing logos from every major local station pointed toward the wide marble staircase like compasses searching for direction. Across the street, protesters had begun gathering quietly with handmade signs tucked beneath raincoats and umbrellas. Some signs mentioned justice. Others mentioned dignity. Most simply carried Vanessa Cole's name. Inside chambers on the 4th floor, the atmosphere felt completely different. Silent. Warm. Focused. Vanessa stood alone beside the tall window overlooking the city while steam curled upward from untouched tea resting on her desk. Morning light filtered weakly through heavy clouds, painting silver reflections across the framed law degrees hanging on the wall behind her. The red marks around her wrists had faded slightly overnight, but not completely. She noticed them again while adjusting the cuff of her navy blazer. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Judge Cole? Tyler Boone stood hesitantly in the doorway holding his cap awkwardly against his chest. Vanessa turned slowly. He looked exhausted. Dark circles beneath his eyes. Uniform pressed too quickly. Like a man who had not stopped replaying yesterday either. May I come in? He asked quietly. Vanessa studied him for a moment before nodding once. Tyler stepped inside carefully, almost respectfully, as though entering sacred ground. The office smelled faintly of paper, cedarwood shelves, and rain drifting through the cracked window nearby. Tyler glanced toward the city skyline before speaking. I know this probably does not matter right now, he began. But I am sorry. Vanessa remained silent. Tyler swallowed. I should have stopped it sooner. His voice tightened slightly. I saw things were wrong before Ryan did. Vanessa walked slowly toward her desk and rested one hand lightly against the polished wood surface. Officer Boone, she said calmly, most systems do not fail because nobody notices wrongdoing. Tyler lowered his eyes. They fail because people notice and stay quiet. The words landed heavily between them. Tyler nodded faintly as if accepting a sentence already deserved. I kept thinking about that little girl in the parking lot, he admitted softly. The one in the video. Vanessa's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. So did I. Outside, the distant roar of reporters grew louder as more vehicles arrived below. Tyler glanced toward the courthouse window uneasily. The department is saying this lawsuit could destroy careers. Vanessa looked at him steadily. Good. Tyler blinked in surprise. But her expression remained calm, not cruel. Just honest. She moved toward the window overlooking the courthouse steps where crowds waited beneath umbrellas and television lights. People keep using the word mistake, she said quietly. But mistakes happen once. Her reflection shimmered faintly against the rain-streaked glass. Patterns happen repeatedly. Tyler stood motionless behind her. Vanessa continued softly. Yesterday I was not arrested because officers believed I stole a car. She finally turned back toward him. I was arrested because somebody looked at a tired black woman in ordinary clothes and decided she did not belong in a safe neighborhood driving a decent vehicle. Tyler's throat tightened. He had no defense left for that because somewhere deep down he knew she was right. Vanessa reached for a folder resting neatly atop her desk. Legal filings. Witness statements. Printed. Screenshots from the body camera footage already spreading across national news. She placed one hand calmly over the papers. This lawsuit is not revenge, she said. Revenge is emotional. Her eyes lifted toward Tyler again. This is correction. Silence settled softly across the office after that. Then from outside came the sudden burst of camera shutters firing rapidly together. Vanessa straightened her blazer sleeve one final time and walked toward the chamber doors. Tyler stepped aside instinctively to let her pass. As she moved beyond him into the crowded courthouse hallway, every conversation outside seemed to stop all at once. Not because a victim was walking through the building. Because authority finally was. 3 weeks later, the rain finally returned to the grocery store parking lot. Thin silver drops drifted through the glow of the overhead lamps while evening shoppers hurried toward their cars carrying paper bags against their jackets. The world had moved forward the way it always did. News cycles changed. Cameras disappeared. Protest signs came down from courthouse fences. But some places held memory longer than people realized. Officer Ryan Mercer stood alone near the far edge of the lot with his hands buried deep inside the pockets of a plain gray sweatshirt. No uniform. No badge clipped to his chest. Just a man staring silently at the stretch of asphalt where his life had split into before and after. His suspension hearing had lasted less than 40 minutes that morning. Internal affairs findings. Policy violations. Conduct review. Mandatory retraining pending investigation. Words delivered coldly across polished conference tables by officials who avoided looking him directly in the eye. Mercer barely remembered leaving the building afterward. He only remembered driving here. Back to the place he could not stop seeing in his head every night. Rainwater gathered along the curb where scattered oranges had once rolled beneath flashing lights. The grocery store sign buzzed softly overhead. Fresh Market. Open 24 hours. Same sign. Same parking lot. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. Mercer slowly walked toward the exact space where Vanessa Cole had stood in handcuffs beneath the storm. The image still lived there in his memory with painful clarity. Her soaked hoodie. The crushed flowers in her hand. The calmness in her voice when she warned him he was making a mistake he could not undo. At the time, he thought she was threatening his career. Now he understood something worse. She had been warning him about his character. A shopping cart rattled across the pavement somewhere behind him before disappearing into the rain. Mercer lowered his eyes toward the curb. Something small rested beside the storm drain, partially hidden beneath wet leaves. He bent slowly and picked it up. One white carnation petal. Brown around the edges now. Fragile. Nearly dissolved by weather and tires and time. He stared at it silently in the center of his palm while rain tapped softly against the asphalt around him. Across town, lights still glowed inside the federal courthouse. Vanessa Cole remained in chambers long after sunset, reviewing case files stacked neatly across her desk. The city skyline shimmered through the tall windows behind her while distant thunder rolled faintly beyond the river. Her office felt quiet tonight. Peaceful. She set down her reading glasses and flexed her fingers slowly, eyes drifting toward the faint marks still barely visible around her wrists beneath the sleeve of her blazer. They would fade soon. She knew that. Skin healed. But memory healed differently. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Her clerk stepped carefully inside holding a folder. "Judge Cole," he said gently, "the city requested mediation." Vanessa looked toward the folder without reaching for it. "And?" The clerk hesitated slightly. "They are prepared to settle." Vanessa leaned back slowly in her chair. Through the courthouse window, lightning flickered briefly across distant clouds before fading again into darkness. "No," she said quietly. The clerk blinked. "No?" Vanessa folded her hands carefully on the desk. "Settlements hide things." Her voice remained calm, almost soft. "Trials teach things." Silence settled across the office after that. Then the clerk nodded once with quiet understanding and stepped back toward the doorway. Vanessa remained alone beside the city lights again. Down below, people crossed sidewalks carrying umbrellas beneath the storm, ordinary lives moving quietly through ordinary nights. Vanessa watched them for a long moment before finally turning off the lamp on her desk. Darkness settled gently across the room except for the silver glow of rain against the courthouse windows. And somewhere miles away in a grocery store parking lot, a former officer stood silently in the rain holding the last crushed piece of a flower he should never have destroyed.